Welcome to part one. This is where we set the stage by understanding these opening ideas. You'll be ready for every layer we add as the series continues. Since this is just the beginning of the series, each idea here serves as preparation. The deeper applications we'll cover later depend on the clarity we build right now. When we talk about analyzing behavior in applied settings, one of the biggest challenges is finding a way to show that an intervention truly works without interrupting progress. Not every behavior can safely return to baseline, and not every environment allows a reversal. That's exactly why the multiple baseline and changing criterion designs have become anchors in applied behavior analysis. They let us keep treatment in place while still demonstrating a functional relation between what we do and how behavior changes. Both designs rely heavily on repeated measurement, steady state logic, and strategic sequencing to clarify whether improvements are tied to the independent variable or simply coincidental. What makes these designs so valuable is that they bridge scientific rigor with practical ethics, supporting change while analyzing it. Over the years, these tactics have held up because they work naturally within realities of education, clinical practice, and community-based intervention. As we walk through the first part of the series, you'll see how each design operates, why its logic is reliable, and how the visuals you're seeing reflect the exact and analytic process described in the research. This foundation equips you for what comes next. Before moving forward, it's important to outline what this section prepares you for. You're going to understand the essential logic behind multiple baseline and changing criterion designs, how prediction, verification, and replication work together to establish experimental control. These aren't just abstract steps. They're the reasoning structures that guide real clinical and research decisions. This section also prepares you to recognize when each design variation fits best. Multiple probe versions, delayed baselines, and non-concurrent arrangements all serve a purpose, and understanding their difference sets you up for choosing appropriately in applied work. You'll gain clarity on implementation, including selection baselines, determining when to begin intervention, and shaping the criteria in ways that demonstrate control while still respecting ethical obligations. And finally, you'll learn how to critically evaluate advantages and limitations so your decision-making is anchored in logic, not convenience. This part of the series creates the conceptual map, so the more advanced examples later feel intuitive rather than overwhelming. With these objectives clear, we can move deeper into how these designs function and why they are so central in analyzing behavior change. One reason these designs show up at the start of the series is because they reflect core professional competencies. They directly connect to distinguishing dependent from independent variables because the entire design structure hinges on manipulating one while observing systematic changes in the other. They also embody the defining features of single case design, repeated measurements, stable baselines, prediction, verification, and replication. When you look at a staggered baseline or a stepped criterion change, you're looking at a real-time demonstration of those principles. These designs also highlight why single case approaches remain so powerful compared to group designs. They are sensitive to individual performance, responsive to environmental influences, and capable of revealing functional relations without large samples. For practitioners, these aren't optional skills. They're central to how you evaluate every intervention you implement. And because multiple baseline and changing criterion designs show up repeatedly in certification standards, research literature, and applied practice, mastering them early in this series sets the tone for everything that follows. Now that we've grounded their relevance, we can move into key language you'll keep encountering as we build upward. To navigate the rest of the series smoothly, certain terms need to feel familiar. A multiple baseline design involves concurrent measurement across different behaviors, settings, or individuals with staggered introduction of the independent variable. Each tier acts as its own test population and replication. Changing criterion design focuses on gradual stepwise improvements. Each shift in criterion serves as a new opportunity to see whether behavior changes systematically in alignment with that expectation. A multiple probe design uses intermittent baseline checks rather than continuous measurement, making it ideal when repeated testing might distort performance or waste time. A delayed multiple baseline begins some baselines later than others, useful when ethics or logistics prevent starting everything simultaneously. A non-concurrent multiple baseline involves separate A-B sequences conducted at different times, allowing prediction and replication, but lacking verification because baselines aren't measured concurrently. Finally, range-bound versions use upper and lower performance limits within each phase, strengthening analytic control. With these terms clarified, the groundwork is set. Now we can move naturally into the most commonly used tactic in applied behavior analysis. This design stands out because it solves a very real problem: how to demonstrate control without withdrawing something that's working. Instead of relying on reversals, it uses staggered timing across independent tiers to show that behavior changes only when the intervention is introduced. Once concurrent baselines are stable, the independent variable is applied to one tier. If that tier shifts while the others remain unchanged, we gain evidence that the change is linked to the intervention. When each subsequent tier shows a similar pattern once treatment is applied, replication strengthens the conclusion. This structure makes the logic of prediction and verification visible without ever stopping the progress that's already begun. That's why this design became a staple after Baer, Wolf, and Risley introduced it. It preserves ethical integrity while maintaining experimental rigor. In practice, the design aligns naturally with how clinicians operate, teaching multiple skills, working across different settings, or supporting multiple individuals. Its flexibility allows it to be used with a wide range of behaviors, from skill acquisition to behavior reduction. Now that we've established its purpose, the next step is to look at exactly how this design functions in action. The operation of this design unfolds in clear methodological steps. Everything begins with concurrent baseline measurement, which ensures that any variable influencing one tier has the opportunity to influence the others. This sets the stage for prediction. If nothing changes, the data should continue in the same pattern. When the independent variable is applied to the first tier, its trajectory is compared to the untreated tiers. If behavior changes only where treatment is introduced, verification occurs through the stability of remaining baselines. After behavior stabilizes under the new condition, treatment is applied to the next tier, producing replication when the same pattern emerges. This staggered process continues until every tier has experienced the intervention. What makes this design so robust is the repeat demonstration that change is tied to treatment rather than external events. Each tier becomes a separate opportunity to show that the environment stayed constant while only the treated behavior shifted. By the end, the pattern forms a compelling argument for functional relation. With this structure in mind, we can now explore how baseline logic, prediction, verification, and replication operates at the core of this design. Baseline logic drives the integrity of both designs, but it becomes especially visible here. Prediction emerges once a stable baseline is established. The expectation is simple. Without intervention, the behavior should continue in its current pattern. Verification comes from observing untreated tiers at the moment treatment is introduced somewhere. If those baselines remain steady, they confirm that the prediction is accurate. Replication happens every time the next tier changes systematically following treatment, mirroring the pattern observed earlier. Together, these elements form the analytic backbone of design. The multiple baseline approach may not produce direct verification the way reversals do, but it compensates by offering multiple opportunities to confirm predictions and replicate effects across independent tiers. When the same pattern repeats, stability before treatment, clear change after treatment, the logic becomes unmistakable. These mechanisms are what make the design so powerful and so widely used. Now that the reasoning is established, the next step is understanding the different forms this design can take and how each serves a distinct analytic purpose. This design's versatility comes from its three primary forms, each suited to a different analytic question. When used across behaviors, the focus is on multiple distinct responses within the same individual. The behavior must be independent enough not to influence one another, yet similar enough to respond to the same treatment. When applied across settings, the behavior is measured in different locations or contexts, classrooms, behaviors, or time blocks. This form helps determine whether an intervention consistently produces change across environments and reveals patterns of generalization. The third form, across subjects, examines the same behavior across multiple individuals, especially valuable when several people need the same intervention because each person becomes a separate replication of the effect. Only Although only one form carries the across behaviors level, all three involve treatment applied across technically different behaviors because each behavior by setting or by person combination operates independently. Understanding these forms prepares us for how the design functions in applied examples. With that foundation in place, we can now step into a concrete case that shows the design working across multiple behaviors in a sports performance context. A practical example comes from applied sports performance. Researchers evaluated 3 linebacker skills: reads, drops, and tackles, treating each as an independent behavior even though all belonged to the same players. Baselines were recorded concurrently until stable patterns emerged. The intervention introduced 2 components: self-set goals and public posting of performance. Players reviewed their baseline data and chose a goal of 90% correct performance during practices. Treatment was then applied to one skill at a time while the others remained in baseline. This staggered approach made the logic visible. When a skill entered intervention, performance improved sharply, and when it remained in baseline, it stayed relatively unchanged. The results were strong and consistent. All 5 players met or exceeded their performance goals during practices for each skill. Even more telling, these generalized to games without using posting. Because each player served as a complete replication across 3 behaviors, the design demonstrated functional control multiple times. This example captures how design leverages independence between behaviors while using sequential treatment to confirm a reliable effect. Now that we've seen the across behaviors form in action, we can move into another applied example that highlights replication across. Building on that example, the results reveal why this design remains so influential. Each skill improved only after entering intervention, confirming that the treatment, not chance, produced the change. The 90% goal created a clear reference point, and across reads, drops, and tackles, players consistently met or exceeded expectations. What strengthens the interpretation is the consistency across all 5 players. Each athlete showed the same pattern: stable baselines, sharp improvement following treatment, and sustained success. That level of replication reinforces confidence in the intervention. Another important aspect was generalization. Even though performance in games wasn't publicly posted, improvements carried over, showing that the intervention produced meaningful behavior change beyond the training context. This is exactly the type of evidence practitioners look for when evaluating the practical significance of an intervention. The example also demonstrated how natural it is to embed multiple baseline logic into real-world coaching or training environments. It aligns with how performance feedback and goal setting often work. With this applied foundation established, we're now ready to expand into additional forms and deeper analysis in the next part of the series. We'll stop part 1 here, but stay tuned. Part 2 builds directly on this groundwork and starts revealing the bigger picture behind these designs.